The origins of Stoicism is kind of the rejection of common values,
Yeah.
is kind of looking at common values and saying there's something wrong here. Um,
But you don't have to
and
live on the street to be a Stoic.
yeah, and I'll get to that point,
Yeah.
because that's worth developing, the difference there. But some people like Epictetus, who's the Stoic that I worked most with, he looks at Diogenes as the ideal. The two people that he talks about the most and references the most is Diogenes the Cynic, the stories we were talking about, and Socrates. Both of these people were people who threw away social convention, were considered trolls in the modern sense, but not trolls in the sense of intentionally aggravating, but there was an educational value, right? Socrates thought himself as a gadfly whose goal was to bug you out of your, out of your mundane, unexamined existence. So Socrates or Epictetus idealizes these people. He thinks that cynicism, Epictetus does, not all Stoics, but Epictetus thinks that cynicism is the highest calling. It's the thing that not everyone can do. It's better than being a Stoic. He's like, it's Stoicism plus,
Yeah.
right? He's like, not everybody possesses the strength to go that far. So
Yeah.
we're do Stoicism, because if you're a Cynic, that's your entire life. One of the nice things about Stoicism, it's something that you can implement into your life. Cynicism, you can't implement into your life. It's a rejection of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's
I
interesting.
love it.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Do you want me to get to Stoicism now?
Yeah, let's jump into Stoicism. So, and we can even continue on that idea that, okay, maybe Stoicism is a philosophy that is, it's built for the masses, or not for the masses. I don't want to say that, because there's also the interpretation that maybe Stoicism is something that is only meant for a smaller, tight community of people on Earth who are able to help others. But I see it as something that should be brought to the masses, because it has such value if you implement it into your life, right? Did it start off as that? Like, is that what they were trying to do? Make it easier for people to kind of get in the game?
Yeah. So I'll start with the difference between Stoicism and Cynicism.
Yeah.
Right. So Cynicism thinks that life is according to a good life is a life according to nature. But your nature is almost like this pursuit of just virtue at the expense of everything else. And then Stoicism thought that good life was a life in accordance with nature, but your nature was as a rational social animal.
Yeah.
Right? So there's this social aspect that's built into Stoicism that's not built into Cynicism, where a good Stoic is one who lives according to their nature, but they respect their nature as someone who wants to be part of a community, who wants to have friends and a family, who wants to see political and social change and progress and these kind of things.
Yeah.
So this was the break. It's more inclusive because it incorporates this social aspect. It doesn't see the socialization as being necessarily corrupting or harmful, and that's the big break. Now, in terms of the question of is Stoicism for the masses, absolutely, right? Stoicism was the first cosmopolitan philosophy, so it was the first philosophy. I mean, there's lines in Seneca where Seneca says, like, who is this person? And someone goes, he's a slave. And go, wrong, he's a human being first.
Yeah.
Right? There's this incredible equality that flows through Stoicism, because Stoics saw us fundamentally as rational beings.
Yeah.
That is what we essentially are, and that's the most important part of our identity. And that identity is shared by all human beings. So Stoicism is not for an elite few. I would say the Stoics would consider life as a philosopher for a select few.
And it's even like select might not even be the right term there. It's like the life of a philosopher is for those who can handle it, right? Like and maybe like Stoicism is for people who just need a little bit of help in their life, just to become better at whatever they're doing.
Yeah, so the way Epictetus talks about this is Epictetus says, honestly evaluate who you are, what you like to do, what you're good at. I mean, there's this idea with God there, but we don't need God. But he says, like, God gave you certain talents.
Yeah.
Did he make you good socially? Did he make you, are you strong? Are you good at sports? Are you, are you artistically talented? Look at the skills God gave you, and then do those to the best of your ability. And then the second part is like, some people, God gave them just the disposition to do just philosophy. Yeah. And those people, great, they should do just philosophy. But for most people, you should do what you are inclined towards and what you've discovered you have kind of a talent or an affinity for. So in that sense, yeah, it's for a select few. And I suppose those few are lucky in a sense. Yeah. But it's not like the other ones are weak, right? Yeah. It's not, if you don't want to do philosophy because you don't want to read all day, you like having a social job or being part of something else like that. That doesn't make you weak. It just means that you have a different disposition and a different affinity that you develop, right? And in that sense, you still incorporate Stoicism. You're not failing by not being a professional philosopher, right? Yeah,
this is really interesting because this is incorporating so many of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately. It's this idea of Stoic. Well, let me start like this. This idea of aligning with nature, right? Just the fact that the Cynics thought differently about that than the Stoics. I've really been thinking lately, to get your head around that idea, there are so many offshoots of directions that you can go of live your life according to nature, right? There's so many different ways that you could live your life according to nature. And you're touching on one that I've been really thinking about lately, which is when you're born, some people just grow up and they are naturally inclined towards a certain direction, right? And is it right to fight that? Or maybe what's happening in our modern society is because of the, industrial revolution and the technological revolution, it's like we get into these 9-to-5 jobs doing something that's just going to bring in the money, and you see so many people who at the end of their life, they're like, oh, I really wish I had have done that, or I really wish I had have done that. And what that is I should have aligned with my true nature of what I was inclined towards, right? So for me, naturally, I have a talent for music, right? Now, that's good because it allows me to progress a little bit faster, but it's also bad because if I don't work at it, then I just stay at the same spot, right? Like I don't feel like I need to work towards it when I really do. That would be the best thing for me. But what I've come to lately is, man, I need to incorporate music into my life. I need to incorporate everything that I really love to do and figure out how I can live in this world whilst doing those things, because that's what aligning with nature is, right? It's like, what are the things that I'm drawn to?
Yeah, great. So this is such an interesting question. I really like Epictetus, so I turn to Epictetus in terms of these. So the question is, look, live in accordance with nature. What does that mean? Also, there's different natures. There's outside nature, but then there's our nature. And Epictetus provides a hierarchy on kind of like 3 levels.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah, it's really cool. So there is nature as in like fate, right? So don't fight like the physical world. Yeah. So he even says this, like, if I knew I was destined to die, I would like accept death. Yeah. Right. And we can think of this in extreme cases, but it's like if if you have a terminal illness, the Stoics would think, your job then is to make the best use of the time you have. It's not to fight this illness because you're fighting against your fate in this sense. And then we have our shared nature as rational beings. So first thing we do is we don't fight against fate. And then we never compromise our nature as rational beings. And what that means is we never put something above virtue. So if I pursued some sort of like physical pleasure at the risk of compromising virtue, then they would think you're acting more like an animal than a rational being. You're not living in accordance with your nature as a rational being. And then once those 2 questions are aside, you're not being a bad person, you've come to terms with your fate, then it's like you have so many other choices now, how you live. And for there, Epictetus says we need to look to our individual nature. So our affinities and our dispositions, as you talked about, your disposition to singing or to music, your affinity for these things. And then the last thing we can turn to is our acquired roles. Talk about them as social roles.
Yeah.
So then the next thing we do is we consider, what is my nature, the nature of my relationship with other people if I'm a father or a son or a brother or a member of a community. And it's through reference to these kind of things. If we act in a way that satisfies these conditions, that's living in accordance with nature. And the Stoics think your life's going to go really, really well if you're not sacrificing or compromising any of those. Yeah. So I think it's a cool way of fleshing out nature further.
Yeah, and exactly what I was saying. It's like there's so many different things to think about, and that's why in the past it's been really difficult for me to fully grasp this idea of align with nature, because it's not just here's what it is. It's like here's what it is plus this plus this plus this, right? And what I think is really interesting is how this idea has left ripples throughout Western culture. So, for example, even just the fact that you think of people as, well, they have a good nature and a bad nature, right? Like he acted in his best nature, like and it's almost as if like there's kind of a chaotic part of our nature and an orderly part of our nature, and we try to tend towards that good nature, right? I said nature way too many times there. But then even when people say, oh, it's just not in my nature to do this, like we don't think of that as I'm aligning with nature, but that's what aligning with nature is. You think, it's just not within my nature to be an accountant, or to be a musician. I have no tendency towards that, right? So it's cool how it has left ripples. But in terms of the fate side of things, is that essentially saying things that are happening to us, right? Is that like coming to terms with just whatever happens, as in it's going to happen and you have to be able to accept that, right?
Yeah, so there's still room. So fate is like this really difficult issue in Stoicism. They were determinists. So that means that they think that life is fated to occur in a certain way. And they had this kind of, when people hear this, they kind of think, well, what's the point in doing anything, right? If it's deterministic, things are going to happen the way they're going to happen. And there's entire Stoic books arguing against this, that knowing things are fated doesn't give us a reason to not still be motivated. And that's an interesting question. But in terms of this, we have to understand that we stand in a certain knowledge position, a flawed knowledge position, where we don't know what's going to happen to us, right? So the answer is, if I knew what was going to happen to me, and that's why I try to use the example of a terminal illness where you're going to die. But if I knew, or for example, we know we're going to die. We don't know when, but we know we're going to die.
Yeah. So
anything that you know is going to happen to you, you have to come to terms with.
Yeah.
Right? And acknowledge this and not fight against this. Everything else, we still have a capacity to attempt to influence it and navigate that. But once we have failed to influence it, so I try to stop something from happening, but then it happens. Now it has happened. Now it's a part of the things that have happened to me. I no longer have that capacity to influence it, and then that becomes part of, I know that was my fate now. I know that was what was going to happen to me, and then I have to come to terms with it. So the idea is, come to terms with what you know must be the case. That means everything in your past and certain things in the future, like the fact that you're going to die, like the fact that, some people are ignorant and ignorant people are going to do ignorant, harmful, mean things. Like the fact that you're not going to be perfect and sometimes you're going to fail in the future. Certain things are going to happen, you have to come to terms with. Just to put yourself in line with that nature, with those facts of the world. But this is it. It's like if we knew what we were going to do, we could just be like, oh, if we knew what was going to happen, we could come to peace with it. But because we don't know, we're still trying our best to influence it. But once we know how it's going to happen or what has happened, then we come to terms with that fact of the world.